Thank you for joining me here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. As part of the Vertical Podcast Network, we have the Hangers D Podcast, the Helicopter Podcast, and the Vertical MRO Podcast. You can check them all out at verticalhelicast.com. A shout out to our sponsors for this episode, Metro Aviation. They provide the safest, highest quality aviation operations, completions, and maintenance. Check them out at metroaviation.com. Ready Swimmer, training the body, sharpening the mind, building leaders. Our mission, to make you ready. Contact them at readyswimmer.com. And of course, get all your gear at the realrescuestore.com to help support this podcast. Now, coming up next in this episode, we have more amazing stories coming to us from the western side of Canada. This guy, he gives us a story of like an amazing career from what he started and where he is now. So please welcome our next guest, Mr. Miles Randell. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. Today, I've got another Canadian brother with me. Can I say that? Canadian brother? The guys that live way up north, that are like kicking the floor of the U.S., be like, hey, what are you guys doing down there? Knock it off. Just kidding. Just kidding. Hey, this guy, his name is Miles Randell. What's up, Miles? How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to meet you and chat with you.
Yeah, you too, man. And let's see, you are a paramedic by trade, and you're the co-founder and president of Team Aeromedical, which I'm excited to find out all about that. That's good stuff. So you're over in Canada, up by Squamish, right?
Yep.
Northwest.
So our head office is Squamish, so we're in the southwest of British Columbia, and we're about 40 minutes north of Vancouver, 40 minutes north of Whistler Blackcomb, which is opening today. So it's going to be a pretty interesting day for sure.
Nice. Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting. Man, I need to come up there and hang out with you guys. I got to go skiing with all you guys. There are so many guys that I interview from up in that area. It's like, we're going to have a good time. I'm just saying.
If you ski, mountain bike, rock climb, kiteboard, any of the above, this is the place to be.
Check. Sort of. Check. I'm in. I'm just saying. And awesome. the bonus part for me is if I come up, I know I've got good like support. So if I get messed up, I've got somebody to come and help.
There's no doubt.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Miles, I'll tell you what, man, like I said, thank you so much for joining me. If you don't mind, give everybody a little background, who you are, where you're from, and how did you get into paramedicine?
So again, my name's Miles Randell. I'm an advanced life support paramedic. I got involved in emergency services back in 1991. At the time, I was a volunteer search and rescue member up in the Fraser Valley, which is a bit east of where I'm at now. It was an interesting start for sure. The team I was on wasn't real busy, but in 1997, we had kind of a life-changing event that was a pivot for me, a real catalyst, and a real eye-opener for what can happen out there. We were faced with a winter storm, which does happen in Canada.
You're in Canada, eh?
Yep. Sorry. But
sorry. It's my favorite.
The storm was a bit different because we were sent to pick up one patient that was stranded in a snowbank and off a road in a winter storm. We came around the corner in our rescue truck, prepared to just go get this one patient, and we discovered the worst winter storm I've ever seen in my life. Just about blew us off the road in a huge Ford F450. And so we turned around and created Plan B, which was to have two large cats, one in front of us, one behind us, to clear the snow as we went.
What the heck?
We
Wait, a cat?
discovered
Like a
like a,
actual cat? Like the caterpillar cat? Like the with the
yep.
like big skis, big box. It's like a. It looks like a
Oh,
tank,
not,
only it's for
no, not
snow.
that kind of cat, but
Oh,
like a excavator kind of cat, like a
oh,
massive
holy!
machine that
What?
pushes dirt and yeah. So we had three rescue trucks in between the cats. We weren't allowed to move vehicles out of the way, and we found that there were abandoned vehicles everywhere. It was like something out of a disaster movie. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And at one point, we got stuck. One of the guys jumped out of a Suburban to go see what was going on. I jumped out, and I'm a big dude. I'm 250 pounds of solid, and I got blown off my feet. The Suburban, the driver's door got bent around, so it was touching the front wheel and filled with snow. So we ended up splitting the crews. So we put the crew from the Suburban that was now inoperable into the rescue truck before or behind, and we continued on. Got a little bit further on, hit another obstruction, ended up having to put half of our team into a school. We broke into an elementary school and put half the team in there and sheltered because one of the vehicles had frozen up. So eventually the two cats and our rescue truck and myself and three other guys, we continued on. We found our patient. We had to get there on foot because there was a big milk truck that was blocking the road. And so we climbed over the top of the milk truck because it was snow drifted in. Got to the patient, who was with a police officer that was driving home, and came across this scene. And so we carried the patient back to one of the cats, put one of our guys in the cat with her, and got her out safely. She had hypoglycemia, so the guy was able to treat her on the way out, and she got out safely. And then we turned around and looked at what we were left with, staying on scene, and there were vehicles everywhere, busloads of people, people stuck in their cars with pets. And so we quickly realized that we had to deal with a huge number of people, patients. So we were able to get them, ironically, into a farmhouse. And we dragged everybody into a farmhouse, put all the livestock and all the animals in a barn. And eventually we got 176 people out of various stages of entrapment in vehicles and into this farmhouse, and spent the next 48 hours with them.
176 people? Holy cow.
The insanity was that was just what was happening where we were. And it turns out in the background, our command center had moved into a fire hall, and they found at least that number of people again in another location. And so it ended up being over 300 people that were rescued within that 48-hour period. And I'm a bit of a planes, trains, and automobiles kind of approach to things, and so was the entire rescue there. So we tried snowmobiles. They couldn't work in the terrain because we'd have a snowdrift in one section and then bare road on the next, and it just it was completely unable to negotiate with a snowmobile, with a quad, and a UTV. The military came in with armored personnel carriers. They froze up. So eventually we just determined that we were actually, the farmhouse we were holed up in was right beside a train line. And so we commandeered a train and got everybody out in a train. So 48 hours later, we got everybody out. There were no fatalities. We dealt with a number of different medical emergencies, and obviously with 176 people under duress and without their medications and all that kind of stuff. But we got everybody out, and ironically, the other teams that were working, because there were SAR teams from all over the southern part of our province of British Columbia, they were able to get everybody out as well without a single fatality in the area that we were working in. So it was quite the insane story, without a doubt. Something that I can't imagine ever experiencing again. But so yeah, at the time, you're gonna laugh at me, but I was a carpet salesman. I was trying to sell carpet. Yeah, and I was like, you know what, I really like the search and rescue thing way too much. I got to find a way to do that, and be contribute a bit more. And so I ended up quitting being a carpet salesman and becoming a paramedic instead, and definitely a complete change in my life, without a doubt.
And that is how this podcast started. I love it. Oh my gosh, Miles. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I will say just a little.
Yeah, go ahead. I got questions. I got lots of questions.
A little aside. There's so many different stories, right? Like at one point, the guy the incident commander heard a fire call go out because we were staging in a fire hall, and he's like, "Wait a second, I recognize that address. That's my house." And his house was burning down while this rescue was going on.
Oh no!
And I'm gonna set up a bit of a story, because I had a bit of I butted heads with a SAR team leader from North Vancouver who said, "We're going to just come in here and we've got a Skookum rescue truck. We'll deal with this." And I was like, "No, it's not that easy. This is a totally different situation." And it was one of my first interactions with a character called Tim Jones, who was a legend in search and rescue medicine in British Columbia and Canada. And when you met Tim, he's passed away now, and that'll come up in this podcast. But when you met Tim, you almost always butted heads with him for the first little while, and that was one of my first big head-butting episodes with Tim. And he did come out with his Skookum rescue truck, and he did quickly learn that all the trucks were going to be disabled. The rescue truck that we used, it did freeze up. One of our guys used a road flare to warm the engine up to get going again at one point. So it was absolutely insane weather, something that you can't imagine. So anyway, yeah, kind of sets the scene for talking about Tim later on, because he was an incredible, passionate character, and that was one of many interactions with him that were interesting and awesome in hindsight. So.
Wow, man. I'm kind of blown away with all this. You said 48 hours. You guys were stuck in a barn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were stuck in a farmhouse. And you got to understand.
Farmhouse.
Yeah. Prairie farmers, they're pretty prepared. So they fed us for 48 hours. It was a pretty incredible scenario, without a doubt.
Oh my God. Yeah, but you got 137 people. 173 people.
176. Yeah.
176. See, all my numbers are off. That's terrible. Still 176 people in a farmhouse.
Yeah. It was
and
tight.
Everything's frozen around. That's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so obviously there's heat and a fireplace going or something inside the farmhouse, and everybody's like snuggling on the floor to keep warm or what?
Yep.
Oh my God. And then, all right. So then in order to get people
in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
176 people using 3 bathrooms. But
go outside. Anyway. Wait, don't go outside.
Can't go outside.
Oh my good Lord. What a nightmare that would be. Just it's not your turn. You have 5 minutes. Go. I'm not done yet. Yes, you are.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. All right. So the train was next to like within walking distance of the farmhouse, or like literally right on the other side of it?
Yeah. So it was like there's the farmhouse and there's their driveway. Yep. And when they pull out the driveway, you go over the train tracks to get to the road. So it was probably 300 feet between the house and the train tracks. And the snow was blowing so much that we had to basically like get everyone to hold hands and make sure that nobody got lost in those 200 or 300 feet.
How did you get a train to come up to help? That you got to think about that for a second. This is the first time I've ever heard this, right? Hey guys, we got no trucks. Helicopters can't fly. Yeah, could you send a train? I'm sorry, did you say train? Yes, I need a train. What? Imagine that phone call, hey? But it was amazing. Like there's a big snowplow on the front of the train when it arrived, one in the front, one in the back. And I was standing in the, like, I don't know what you call the control area of the train, but where the engineer runs the thing. And the snow was coming over the hood of the train. It was so deep in places, it was unreal. And it was the only thing that worked. Yeah. That is amazing. What a good idea.
Yeah.
Saved
Can't make it up.
176 people. I got that one. You can't make this up. That's why I love this so much. You get a train. Oh my God, dude. I love it. I love what we do so much. It's freaking ridiculous. Miles, the carpet salesman, calls in a train. Oh, that's great.
What can I
So
say?
that's how what brought you to being a paramedic. That incident.
Yeah, it's you know what it's like when after every rescue happens and everything's kind of stopped, right? And you kind of got this, you're looking around like, did that really just happen? And then where am I going to go from here? And that's kind of what happened with me there was like everyone heads off to where they got to go. We all leave the train. And we're all looking at each other like, really? That really did just happen. And then afterward, I was like, I don't want to go back to work. I want to figure out how to do this for a living. And so that's where I kind of took a look around, figured out what my options were, and decided to become a paramedic. Whether or not that was a good idea depends on what day you talk to me. I've got an 8-year-old boy who's like, Daddy, I want to work for you. I want to be a paramedic. And I'm like, let's look at maybe be a pro mountain biker or something. But if you want to be a paramedic and you want to work for me, let's just make sure you don't make the same mistakes I made and go down the same path I did. So.
Oh, that's great. That's good. Miles,
Yeah.
That is fantastic. All right. So, I love asking what somebody's first rescue is, but that sounds really good. So I'm going to divert it a little bit and say, when you got qualified as a paramedic, do you remember like your first solo call? We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
I do. I made a fool of myself, so it really stands out. I was.
Hey, we all do, for the record. I just throwing that out there.
Most of my calls have like a million different avenues to talk about, but this one, I was working with a much more experienced paramedic who she'd been working up north for ages. I was working up in northern BC because that's where you kind of had to go to get started. And we were sent on a motor vehicle incident, rollover truck, about an hour and a half northeast of our station. So we're rolling through the winter, cruising up on the scene, and there's a fuel tanker in the ditch, and there's also like a work truck, like a big pickup full of loggers that are now standing around trying to help their buddy who's inside. So he's laying basically in a rolled over truck on the ceiling of the truck, like the top of the roof of the truck, and he's got an elbow here and an elbow here, and I'm looking at this thing going, and back then we didn't really have any pain medications yet. Like it was being a paramedic back then was pretty entry level. And so I looked at the guy and I'm like, oh man, what are we going to do for this? I can't give him any pain control. So I said, hey, we're going to slide you out of here and we're going to make this as painless as we possibly can. But what actually came out of my mouth was, we're going to slide you out of here and I'm going to make this as painful as I possibly can. The whole scene erupted in laughter. Even the patient was laughing. And so we slid him out and he was laughing so hard he didn't feel an ounce of pain until we got him in the back of the ambulance. And, things were on the right path. So, pretty inauspicious start to my paramedic career, without a doubt.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty funny. Yeah.
Oh, Miles, that's why I love doing this. I love these stories.
Humor for pain management.
Oh, whatever works. I'm just saying.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You're going to have me laughing all night. I can feel it. Like, it's just ridiculous. Wow. Nice first solo call. Sort of like you and your partner. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Dang, man.
Yeah. Nothing like making a good first impression.
Right. You know, those logger boys, like even like all the oil rig workers up there, they're like stout dudes and can take care of themselves
Oh
as
yeah.
well. So
Yep.
and actually thinking about that, that's some of like my world. And I say that because like if I jump on a helicopter, a lot of times I'm flying an hour to get out to a patient or a victim. You guys having to drive an hour and a half to location? Holy cow. Then you got to extract them and then you still got to drive an hour and a half back. Jeez. Yeah. I know that world
we definitely like in my world today, like I just did a mission. We longlined another logger off a waterfall, and he fell 25 feet off a cliff. And the guys were like, "No, we'll just carry him down the waterfall." And we're like, "No, you won't. Like, can you just stop and we'll come in and longline him off safely and make sure that nobody else gets injured." So we get to the guy, and you know he's got a broken leg. He's pretty banged up. 25-foot falls, you can't argue with that. And he's like, no, I don't need pain medications. And we touch his leg to splint it, and he's screaming in pain. And I'm like, no, you need pain medications. And give him some ketamine. And next thing you know, he's like, I like this camping spot. This is really nice. Goes from screaming in pain to thinking he's camping. I love ketamine for that, but for other reasons too. It's such a good treatment option. But I just look at the patients we have these days, and they're tough guys. There's no two ways about it. People that are phoning, I know it's going to take you 2.5 hours to get here, but sorry, but I've really hurt myself this time. And they're super casual, and you get there and you're like, oh wow, yeah, you did fall 25 feet off that cliff. It's probably closer to 50, but everyone's just so tough and casual about things.
Yeah, those guys are freaking machines. Like.
Yeah.
And the only reason I really know that is one of my buddies here that I work with. Actually, he's at the gym with me all the time. He's an oil rig worker, and he was working up in all that area and just miles from home. You're like, oh, you broke your finger? Yeah. Pull that straight, strap it to the other one. You're good. Oh, you got a cut there? Yeah. Unless it's cut off. And even then, maybe just throw that sucker in a ice bucket. We'll get you there. You know what? Don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
Tough as nails.
Some dirt on it.
Close. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Like the stories that my boy Jamie tells me all the time, I'm like, oh my gosh. It's crazy. So I feel it. Yeah. So I'm sure you've had your fair share of those guys. Like everybody up there.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, my paramedic career kind of took me all over the place. I had to start in northern BC, and you kind of started a small, like low call volume station, and then you transfer down to bigger call volume because when you start out, you only get paid by the call. So some days you're making $40 in 2 weeks, and other days you're making something that'll actually let you pay the bills. And then you eventually get to full-time work, which is almost always in the bigger cities. It's changed a lot since I started, but yeah, I found myself in Vancouver, which is kind of the biggest metro area in British Columbia. And I did a bunch of different type of work as an advanced life support paramedic. We were in a targeted system, so all we would do is high acuity, cardiac patients, respiratory patients, major traumas, and pediatrics. And so we were quite focused on the sickest of the sick patients. I did a little bit of air ambulance work, did a little bit of internationally protected persons work. So I was like the personal paramedic to a president and one of the president's kids, and our all of a sudden I'm forgetting the name, prime minister, and then Will and Kate when they came to town, and different characters like that. So I kind of bounced around doing a bunch of different things, but I ultimately ended up in North Vancouver at Station 56, which I'm sure you guys have interviewed people from North Shore Rescue before. That's kind of when I got
John Blown,
North Shore Rescue.
episode 96. Yeah. I already looked that up just to make sure because it's been a little while. John came on. He told some epic stories from North Shore Rescue. I was like, love it. Yeah,
John's a good man. He used to drive a Jeep, and I had a lot to say about his Jeep. It was a beauty, but his ways have changed, and now he just drives a truck. It's really sad to see, but
come on, John. He's not here to defend himself either, so we can just pick on him.
No, he's a good man for sure. He's a really good guy. So I put in a bunch of years with North Shore Rescue, and Tim Jones was the team leader of North Shore Rescue at the time, and Tim's the guy I referred to earlier. I kind of had a few headbutting incidents with Tim while getting to know him, but 20 years down the line, we actually became really, really good friends, and he was like my messy older brother. It was always kind of funny to see Tim because he'd be doing a news interview in his ambulance uniform, covered in food, just could care less what people thought. He was he was a character. I do remember one news interview where we were searching for a missing person on the North Shore, and she just wouldn't stay in one place, and so she was kind of bouncing around all over the place, and we were tracking her all over. And the news interviews, Tim said, so she was bouncing around the North Shore Mountains like a Tomahawk cruise missile without a guidance system. Just classic Tim Jones. He said what was on his mind, and it was always entertaining. And he was the godfather of mountain medicine in southwestern British Columbia, and really search and rescue in Canada. If you wanted to talk to anybody about mountain medicine, he was the guy to talk to at the time. So really, really good guy. Lots of rough edges, but don't we all have rough edges?
Oh yeah. Interesting. Like you're bringing this up right now because there's an article. So he actually passed away, and I know you mentioned that earlier, but it's the way he passed away, and I'd like to get into that right now. Did you respond to this as well?
Yeah. I've got a tattoo right here on my arm of Tim. Tim and I on our last flight together. That's Tim. That's myself.
That's cool.
I was working a night shift for the provincial ambulance service on an advanced life support car. My car was 56 Alpha 1, and my friend Jordan and a couple other guys were working on the Alpha 3 car, which is a primary care paramedic car. And it's 56 Alpha 3. Jordan's now our vice president at TEAAM and one of our founders, but we were assigned to a cardiac arrest on Mount Seymour, which is one of the North Shore Mountains. It is a local ski hill, but once you get off the ski hill, it's brutal terrain. It's rugged. It seems like when you're on the North Shore Mountains, the ski hills, there's 3 of them. That's kind of the limit, but you can go past those ski hills real easy and find yourself in a really, really dangerous place. Beautiful place, but if you're not prepared for it, a dangerous place. So Tim had been up at the North Shore Rescue cabin, the team cabin, at a fundraiser, and we got called for a 58-year-old male in cardiac arrest. So we started.
I'm going to ask you to hold right there, because there's an article right here, and I want to read the article, and then we'll get more of the backstory. Is that cool?
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's a really nice article. I'm only going to read a little bit of it, but this is on the Vancouver Sun. It says, North Shore Rescue Leader dies suddenly on Mount Seymour. North Shore Rescue Leader Tim Jones is being remembered as a superhero who gave his life to helping others. Tributes continue to pour in on social media for Jones, 57, who died suddenly Sunday night on Mount Seymour. Metro Vancouver. Paramedic dispatchers often joked when a call came in about anything even remotely extraordinary on North Shore Mountains, Tim Jones would probably already be there. And if he wasn't, he was texting the North Shore Search and Rescue team members to prepare them for the day ahead. Quote, I swear he didn't sleep, said John Blown, who volunteered with Jones on a North Shore Search and Rescue unit for 11 years. Quote, he was a force of nature. I've never met anyone who was so passionate and dedicated. All right, Miles, now you get the call for a 57-year-old man in cardiac arrest.
So yeah, back then we had fairly new computer-aided dispatch, and we had info blast come up saying 57, 58-year-old male cardiac arrest, Mount Seymour. Then it came up, this is your station chief, Tim Jones. My stomach fell out of me when I read that. It still does to this day. Like took the wind out of my sails just talking about it there. And then the next the next piece of info was there's a change in policy, and you guys aren't allowed to walk up the trail to get to him because of high risk hazard policies. And so all of a sudden we were faced with the fact that our friend of 20 years, our station chief, my North Shore Rescue team leader, we were technically not allowed to walk up a snowy trail to get to his side. I will say that we might have walked up that trail because.
Well, can I ask? Can I dive in a little further? What the reason behind it was that they deemed it unsafe to go up.
Yep.
But he was already up there.
There was a big change in policy within the ambulance service that I worked for that really reduced the amount of risk that they were willing to take on with their staff, and it was a fairly dramatic change. It's improved since then, but at the time it was, hey, it's a snowy trail, you're not allowed to walk up it, and so by the time Tim was brought to us, some time had elapsed for sure. He was brought down in a toboggan behind a snowmobile or sled. CPR was ongoing at the time, but it had been a lot of time before he had any kind of advanced life support care. Obviously, we know that he would have potentially have done better if we were able to run a resuscitation at the scene versus having CPR done in transport. But unfortunately, that's not what elapsed, or not what happened. And so by the time he was brought to us, a lot of time had elapsed. We definitely threw the entire drug kit at him. We did everything we possibly could, eventually transporting him to Lionsgate Hospital, which was the closest trauma center and a hospital that we knew quite well. But unfortunately, after all of our efforts, within a few minutes of arriving at the hospital, it was, he was called, and resuscitation was discontinued. So it was a life-changing event for sure. Ultimately, it led to the end of my ambulance career because of post-traumatic stress injuries. That was kind of the first trigger that ended my career. Things have changed dramatically since then, and I'm doing way better.
I'm sorry, and congratulations, all in the same sentence. So, and I mean that on both sides.
Yeah. Definitely appreciate that. It was devastating to lose him for sure. He was such a, well, let's quote John Blown, such a force of nature, and such a good person, like a good man. I'm still quite good friends with his son and his daughter, and so the connection is still there for sure, and they're really supportive of what we've done in Tim's memory. But yeah, still, you look back on the day, it was 10 years ago, and still just a devastating loss for sure.
Wow. Dang, man.
What's interesting is,
sorry.
I appreciate that. I mean, you can look at every event and look at the negatives of it, but I know that I'll never have any doubt that the best was given to him. We did everything we possibly could for him. And the staff at Lionsgate Hospital did the same. So I think that's part of the positive, is that there's no doubt that he was given the best possible chance once we were able to give him medical care. And then we've been able to make something really positive in his memory. So there's always a silver lining to something. So
agreed. It's hard. It's hard to lose somebody that's that close, that's been in your life for that long. Especially doing the job that we do all together. I get it. Yeah. I'm also sorry to hear about some of the policy. Like it's interesting to me. And I, you know what? I don't want to, I have a hard time throwing like other people out there. I like to put things on myself more than anything else. But we find ways to get stuff done. That's what we do. Like I get it from both sides. It's hard to, because as a manager, you want your people to be safe, and you don't want to put them in a spot where they could be injured, and then it's causing more havoc. But at the other side of it, like, you got to trust your people to make the smart judgment too. And you're like, there's that fine line, a balance.
And I know my current place of employment, if we see that there's a hazard, we find a way to train our people and equip our people to mitigate that hazard.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best approach. There are some scenes that just aren't safe, for sure. But
Agreed.
People do find themselves in places that are hazardous until you have the training and equipment to be able to actually get there safely. So,
right. You know, I know right now on the helicopter, anytime that I get into an area that's, and I know we're getting a little off topic, but I think this is kind of important, and I hope this helps somebody out there, is that, you know, we'll go through, you know, like a frat, an assessment, a checklist to see like where everybody's at on the team. Are you comfortable or not? It's a go or no go. And if one person would be like, man, I don't like this, then change. Be like, okay. And I have personally been in both situations where I'm like, oh no, we're good. And somebody else said, no, I'm not. Oh, okay, we're done. That's it.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that, I've been the guy to be like, bro, guys, I'm not comfortable here. Then like, I don't like it. Whatever is going on, I don't like it. So that's a good way to do it. But again, you got to trust your people as well. And so I went on a little bit of a soapbox, but I like it.
it's all good. It's all good.
Hey, you know, it's
funny,
but it's
funny
good
story.
conversation. I like it.
My old partner Johnny that I work with on Tim's resuscitation. He's long since retired. 10 years retired now. But and my wife, who was pregnant at the time, walked up that trail 2 years later on the anniversary. And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with paraflares. Tim had a love of helicopters and paraflares, and so I decided that we were going to hoist some whiskey in his name, and we were going to pop a couple of paraflares. And so I got to his memorial site, and like I say, it was a snowy winter's night, but my wife was very pregnant at the time, and she didn't have any problems walking up that trail. But anyway, so I pulled out a paraflare, and Amy looks at me and she goes, isn't that paraflare expired? And I was like, oh, yeah, it is a little bit. She's like, well, shouldn't you not fire that? And I'm like, oh no, it's in Tim's memory. It's not a big deal. If it doesn't fly as far, it doesn't matter. So I open up the paraflare, pop it, and it goes, doesn't go more than 5 feet up, and it goes about 150 feet, bouncing, plinkoing through trees, and the whole forest is glowing. And you got to understand that Tim's memorial site where he passed away is right beside a ski run. Like you can see it right through the trees, right? So I'm like, oh man, this is bad. And so we hoist our whiskey. We walk back down to the parking lot laughing about it. And the ski patroller runs up, and I'm wearing my North Shore Rescue jacket. The ski patroller comes up and he's like, "Are you guys North Shore Rescue?" Not right now. Why, what's up? And he's like, oh, we've got a reporting of a flare sighting. So we've called for police and we've called for North Shore Rescue. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? So next thing I know, I get a phone call on my cell phone from Curtis Jones, Tim's son. And he's like, you wouldn't happen to be up there at my dad's memorial, would you? I'm like, yep, that'd be me. You didn't happen to set off a flare, did you? I'm like, yeah, I did. And he's like, okay, I'll stand the team down. Thanks. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, way to own it. Good job.
Yep. We still go up and hoist one for Tim every year at the same site. We just don't use flares anymore. So
it's probably smart. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah.
Or at least let somebody know you're going to do that. That might help too. And not use an expired flare, Miles.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
What can I say?
Oh, that's
You're
great.
A lively podcast today, anyway.
It's fantastic. I love it. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. Attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at readyswimmer.com or through therealresq.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, Are you ready? All right. So I'm going to change to another story where there was CPR done on another person, and this outcome was nothing more than, I quote, a miracle. And it was actually said multiple times in multiple interviews that this was just a straight up miracle. So let me get into this one. Article number 1 is The Squamish Chief, and the headline is SSAR Key in Miracle Rescue. Found unresponsive near Elfin Lakes. Patient revived after 4 hours of CPR. A team of Squamish Search and Rescue, SSAR, and a doctor from Lions Bay who specialized in treating hypothermia patients played key roles in what was being called a miracle recovery of a Vancouver area woman who was found unresponsive in Garibaldi Provincial Park near Squamish last week. Christine Newman, 24, went missing in the snow about a half kilometer from the Elfin Lakes hut on April 1st around 2 a.m., Squamish RCMP officials said. John Howe, SSAR search manager on Monday, April 7th, said Newman apparently went to the outhouse and somehow got waylaid. Media reports that she fell into a tree well about 10 meters off the trail. That's just one article. The next article, Christine Tink Newman's medical miracle, revived from near death. The stars were aligned, says Squamish Search and Rescue John Wilcox. A 24-year-old Metro Vancouver woman is extremely lucky to be alive after she was found nearly dead in the snow by strangers who administered CPR for hours. There's actually a video, a news clip, which I'm going to play right now.
Good evening. We begin with more on a BC mountain rescue doctors are hailing as a miracle tonight. Medical staff say it's extremely rare for CPR performed for hours to restart a hypothermic heart. Deborah Goebel spoke to the heroes that saved a young woman's life.
They are 5 people who saved a life on Tuesday. 24-year-old Christine Newman was on a remote, snowy trail in Garibaldi Park that morning. She was alone. She was unconscious, hypothermic, and near death after falling down a tree well.
If that backpack hadn't been there, we would never have found her.
Finding that backpack was a miracle, say her parents.
Had it been 3 feet, 4 feet, either which way, they probably, because they were heads down and not really paying attention to the sides, they would have probably just passed right by it.
What happened next is almost as extraordinary. CPR, mouth to mouth, and keeping her warm with their own bodies. And they never stopped.
And even though we could never get a pulse and she never took a breath on her own that we could sense, well, we thought this is a young life. You can't, we have no choice.
The only reason that she's alive with all of the things that she had from a medical perspective was because of the hypothermia.
These people never gave up hope. They kept on with the CPR.
We didn't know that this is something special. We just did what we need to do and what we thought is right.
The team of 6 even took turns stomping down the snow so that a helicopter could land.
But it took around 2 hours, maybe a little longer, before they actually came.
All of these things led to my daughter's survival.
Her parents believe God saved their daughter. The rescuers are more pragmatic.
I see it as an unbelievable series of coincidences.
Still, even they cannot quite believe what happened.
Even to a rational person as myself, that was really, really, really amazing.
All of them are so amazing, and we are so grateful they saved our daughter's life.
Well, it's a good feeling. But, sure, yeah, it's nice.
They all shrug off the hero label, but without her rescuers, Christine Newman would not have survived.
We're just happy that she's doing well.
You can't imagine how we feel.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Squamish.
Miles. Oh my gosh. Like I say it on this podcast all the time, those in distress are praying for a miracle and they're going to get us. Like this lady got a miracle. Wow. That's awesome. And she lived to tell the tale. So what happened? Oh yeah. By the way, a tree well, like the tree and then the hole in the middle of the tree, like that rotted out. Is that what we're talking about?
No, so a
What
tree
the heck?
well is like when you look at a tree, it's kind of, I mean, look at the trees behind me here.
Yeah.
Tree kind of goes like this, and snow doesn't fall underneath it. So it just kind of tumbles in. And so if you
Got
get
it.
underneath this space here, you
Yeah.
really have a hard time getting out, especially if you get skis or a like slow board or slow shoes. Sorry, I'm being a bit of a smart ass about snowboarders and snowshoers, but I'm a skier. What can I say?
Whatever. Hey, when I get up there with a snowboard, you can make fun of me all day long. I'm okay with
Oh,
it.
I will. I will.
And then I'll put skis
So, yeah,
on as well, so you know I do both. All right.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, when you get stuck in that space under here, it's really hard to dig yourself out. It's soft snow. You're hanging upside down on your slowboard or your skis. So it does make it really challenging to get out. And there's a ton of fatalities that happen every year across the world because of being stuck in a tree well. So in her case, she had been frozen into a tree well. She'd been in there for at least 7 hours by the time she was found by bystanders. So they actually had to trip
Wow.
her out of the tree well. She was like literally frozen in. So yeah, it was a bit of a story for sure. And I'll like first off, I'll say that it was incredible teamwork. And I do want to say, like, it wasn't just me. There's no two ways about it. There's no way that we could have got her out of there at all without the incredible teamwork that happened. We had Squamish Search and Rescue members responding from home, like myself. We had Squamish SAR members responding from their job at Whistler Blackcomb as ski patrollers. One of the guys was a heli ski guide that was about to launch a day of heli skiing with a bunch of clients. People from other search and rescue teams that were ski patrollers, and then Dr. Doug Brown, who's a hypothermia researcher and an emerge doc at one of the local trauma centers, who happened to be working at the hospital that day when he got the phone call from John Howe saying, "Hey, we've got that hypothermic arrest case that you've been studying and teaching about all these years, and we need some help with it." And so it was kind of the ultimate chain of survival story, without a doubt. The funny thing about this whole scenario was it all happened on April Fool's Day. And so at first,
Oh
when
my
we were
God,
telling
April
people about
1st.
it,
I didn't even think about that.
yeah,
That's kind of
yeah.
funny.
So
I'm
people
sorry,
were like,
Christine.
no,
I don't mean to laugh, but what a day to
Yeah.
get stuck.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
could you
so-
imagine the radio call? Lady's been frozen for 7 hours. You're like, hi, you guys, you're so silly. That's not possible.
Mhm.
Want to bet? Hold my beer,
Yeah.
watch this.
So there was a little bit of that going on for sure. And then the other part of it was not a lot of people knew about the science of hypothermic cardiac arrest back then. It was 10 years ago. And so a lot of people were like, why are you still doing CPR? Kind of comes up later, but there was a lot of people going, what the heck's going on here? This is something totally different. So it was an interesting case for sure. It came in, I was about to, with my wife, we were about to go ski touring for the day. It was, it snowed overnight, probably 15 centimeters. It was cold out. It was a beautiful sunny day, bluebird day. So we were stoked to go ski touring. And I looked at my pager, and the first message that came in, I was like, I'm going ski touring. This doesn't look very serious. And then the next message, CPR in progress. I'm like, oh, sorry, Amy, I gotta go. And sort of jumped into the Jeep to head to deal with something that was much more serious and the type of thing that I typically respond to. So yeah, we flew up. We had to poach an aircraft from heli skiing because search and rescue in Canada, much of it is volunteer, which was the case here. There's no dedicated helicopters outside of the military. So we poached an aircraft from a heli ski operation and jumped inside and flew over. And the scene itself is a place that I go ski touring on the regular. Like I can drive out of the house and go straight up the road, put some chains on and get up to the trailhead and ski tour, and I'll be back in time to pick up my son from school. But you can continue on and do a traverse. It takes a few days. And my understanding was that was her plan, was to do part of the traverse. So yeah, we flew overhead, and I'm sure you know the feeling. You look down and you can see people doing chest compressions, and you're like, oh yeah, this is legit. Here we go.
Yeah.
pull
Yep.
everything out. So we landed close by. My buddy John Wilcox, who actually ironically was Tim Jones's ambulance partner for about 10 years. He had got in there through ski patrol, been dropped off first, and then we came in and got picked up. And so John and I had a bit of a chat about things, and so at the time that we had arrived, there'd already been 2 hours of bystander CPR. And so in my mind, I honestly can't tell you how many cardiac arrests I've worked on. Probably, 5 in a day was not abnormal. And so this one here, I was like, this is 2 hours. If she weren't hypothermic, there wouldn't be much of a chance. But because she's hypothermic, let's just keep going and we'll see what we got. Well, as soon as we put, we got an ECG on her, we're like, whoa, this is actually a coarse VFib. And she's been in cardiac arrest for over 2 hours now. So dad joke, but it was shocking to see a coarse VFib. So it's got to be said. After
That's
2 hours,
great.
yeah, it's not something that you see every day. I was expecting asystole. Didn't expect anything that was going to be salvageable. And so we got to work on her fairly quickly. Some funny stories for sure that we had some amazing bystanders and in fact, super switched on. One was a local guy that is a local hiker, really, really out there on the trails all the time. I see him around tons. I'm not sure how old he is now. He's one of those ageless guys, but at the time, I think he was in his 70s. So something about the sea to sky that we kind of drank from the fountain of youth here. And so we're, even when we're starting to get a little older in the numbers, we're still a pretty healthy population and usually pretty super fit. And he's just one of those characters that will go on forever hiking in the backcountry. And so he was there. He was a bit of a character for sure. He had pulled out a sleeping bag and started doing skin to skin contact with the girl. And when for example, when I decided I needed to have better IV access than a small IV in her hand, I went to drill an intraosseous, and drilling IO is not that big a deal for people in the medical field, but you always completely forget about bystanders. And so I'm drilling her tibia, and I hear this, oh, and I look up, and there's this guy, Wilhelm. Oh, I'm so going to need a bottle of schnapps after this. Poor guy.
Rubbing his temples as he's watching you drill. Yeah.
So funny. We ended up
totally
giving
see
him a bottle
that
of schnapps, but yeah. So anyway, we got to work on her. The aircraft had to leave and refuel and reconfigure to put a stretcher kit in it and that kind of thing. So they came back a little while later. We asked John how the incident commander. It was a bit of a challenge. Like even the bystanders, there's no cell coverage where she was. So they had people, I call it pickets, but they had people every kind of 30 to 50 feet passing the message back and forth to a spot where they could actually get cell coverage. Wow. So they were up standing on the deck of like the patio of a backcountry hut that's up there. And that was the only spot that they could find cell coverage. So these messages are going back and forth, and we don't have much better communications than they do. So we're passing messages back and forth to them, to our command center where John Howe's in charge. And John had been trying to get air ambulance to come to the scene, but for the same regulations that we faced with Tim, they wouldn't send an air ambulance up there because it was, a snowy scenario. Granted, the helicopters they use are wheeled aircraft. They're not particularly set up for landing in snow. So it's probably a wise decision, but we were told just take her to the local hospital. And no offense to the local hospital, but they didn't have the capability to provide the care that the patient needed at the time. And so we decided that we would temporarily rewrite the rulebook and get her to a hospital that could treat her with ECMO. And so, we when I say we temporarily rewrote the rulebook, we broke every single rule in the book. We were about to get in a ton of hot water at the end of this mission. But because it hit the news, we were fortunately able to sort of put out those fires and explain to people that it was the right thing to do for the patient. But technically, search and rescue in BC, you're not supposed to transport direct to a hospital. It's supposed to be an ambulance crew involved in that. We even here we go with funny stories, but our pilot was super nice guy. Our kids play together. We're still friends. But this was his first ever search and rescue mission, and he's used to heli skiing, flying like bucketing for wildfires, flying workers around and that kind of thing, but all in the sea to sky. And next thing you know, we're saying, hey, we need you to fly to Vancouver International Airport, and we're gonna land at the air ambulance base and take the patient from there to Vancouver General Hospital. And he's like, I've never flown over the city before. So this poor guy, he's beelining over the city. We're doing CPR in the back, John and I. It's going on 4 hours now of chest compressions. And so he's a little caught up in it and understanding that this is truly a life and death situation. And so he's going to do whatever he can to get us safely on the ground. Didn't realize that you got to talk to air traffic control when you fly over an international airport. And he accidentally shut down Vancouver International Airport for a little while.
Oops.
But hey, it worked. As you know, the rescue world's a small world for sure. And when we landed at the air ambulance base, the crew that came out, we knew them. One of them, Bob, is a Whistler Blackcomb ski patroller as well. So all of us have worked together in the mountains and all know what's going on. So at that point, I was doing chest compressions, and John gave report to Bob. And Bob says, Miles, how long have you been doing chest compressions? And I'm like, well, in total, we're at 4 hours now, so including bystander CPR. And he's like, why? Like, why haven't you given up yet? And I stopped CPR for a second, and the patient goes, just a little agonal breath. Yeah. And I'm like, right there, Bob, that's why we have not stopped CPR. She's still in a course.
You just gave me chills, Miles. Holy shit. I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So definitely still in a course VFib. Like, there is no way that she's perfusing, but her brain's being perfused because of chest compressions, and she's a viable patient. So Bob was like, whoa, okay, let's get her loaded up. Let's get her to Vancouver General. So by the time they got her to ECMO, she had 4 hours and 27 minutes of CPR. They rewarmed her fairly quickly. She went from a core temp of 17 degrees Celsius to a core temp of 37, and then they defibrillated her once and got ROSC. Within 10 minutes of getting a pulse back, she was starting to try and bite on the tube. And so they had to sedate her post-arrest after 4 hours and 27 minutes of CPR. And then she was extubated 2 days later, moved to the unit 3 days later, and ended up making a complete and total recovery. Some problems with being frozen, so she had to have some skin grafts, and she did have some residual chest pain for some time, which is not surprising considering 4.5 hours of chest compressions. But she made a complete recovery. It was one of the most moving events of my entire life, for sure. Followed up by having a dinner with her family to thank us. And for a few years afterwards, she would send us a Christmas carol every year that we got to enjoy. Things have moved on since. It's been 10 years, so we don't get the Christmas carols anymore, but I don't ever forget them. That's for sure. It's still, I get goosebumps talking about it. I've kind of traveled the world speaking about that case because I want people to know the medicine behind it and the fact that there's no flashy medicine in the field. It's CPR and recognizing what's going on and getting the patient to the right type of medical treatment. But yeah, still an absolutely incredible story. When I tell it, I'll always get goosebumps.
Oh my gosh, that is a phenomenal story. Thank you so much for sharing. How did you get Christmas carols? Did she record something like a CD or something and send it to you, or what?
No, she recorded it and just sent it by email. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Ah, Christine, you're such a good girl. Ah, thank you. It's one of my favorites is getting like responses from the family and stuff. I've mentioned that a couple of times too here. So,
Yeah, there's nothing more
that's
incredible
wonderful.
than seeing the impact of your work by, hearing from family members or patients. Yeah, it's the most incredible thing.
That is super cool. Well, hats off. Bravo. Well done, gentlemen. Well done.
Thank you. Again, like I
whole
say,
team.
incredible teamwork.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to shout out one more thing here because you guys actually earned yourself an award for that. And the award is from the Canadian Association of Wilderness Medicine.
Yep.
All right. So for this rescue, this is what you guys all earned, or the team, right? That's awesome. So I'm just going to read what the honors and awards description. The Canadian Association of Wilderness Medicine Awards and Recognition Programs was created to recognize persons within the wilderness medical community with exceptional work and or care given in the field of wilderness medicine. The range of these awards is quite broad, with the goal of being able to capture any discipline from first responders and initial care to clinical work or program management. The intent of these awards is to give them out at the annual conference. In addition, one award will be given to the medical learner at the conference with the best presentation as voted on by members attending. Man, that's awesome. I love that. I really, really love that. And I love the fact that you were getting Christmas carols. That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that story. My goodness. I want to touch on one thing about that story that I find extremely intriguing. 4 hours of CPR. So the reason I want to mention that is because I used to teach CPR at the local hospital, just American Heart Association, BLS. You start with CPR. And one of my favorite was like getting some of the nurses that would come in that wouldn't do it, but just to click off the box, like, oh, I have to have this, and be like, all right. And as you go through it, I would say you have to do 2 minutes of CPR before you give your first breath or whatever it was. It's been a little while, Miles. Sorry. All right. So in my training, I would literally like set a clock and say, when the clock hits go, you're going to start CPR and you're going to do chest compressions until the 2 minute mark. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. And 30 seconds and they're dying. And I'm exaggerating, but they're out of breath. They're like, the compressions aren't full anymore. And I'm like, you're 30 seconds in. We have to do this for 2 minutes. You're saying 4 hours. Now, and I get it. There are multiple people that are doing chest compressions, but I will say, Miles, because I've been in this situation before, you're in a helicopter. There's not a lot of changing back and forth when you're in like that confined area. So that entire flight, you're doing chest compressions. That's a lot longer than 2 minutes.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, John and I were sharing off for sure. But yeah, it was exhausting. We were, let me just say I had to put my Gore-Tex in an extra wash cycle because I think I was a little stinky by the end of it, but
yeah,
it was worth it.
Heck yeah. You saved her life. That's amazing. Gosh. But like I said, I want to throw that out there for all of us that do CPR. We all understand. Everybody's like, oh yeah, 4 hours. That's insane. So I feel you. Well done. Like, oh, that's amazing. God, I love these stories. Heck yeah. It's great. It's great.
I want to do a shout out. I'm now a board member of the Canadian Association of Wilderness Medicine. I wasn't at the time that I got that award, but amazing group of people. It's multidisciplinary. There's paramedics, nurses, doctors, first aid attendants, EMTs, you name it. Really, really good group of motivated people. A prior person you've had on the show, I don't know what you call people that have been on the show, but James Dahmer.
James Dahmer. Love that guy.
Prior guest James Dahmer. He just received the same award for a really dramatic long line rescue that he did off the Squamish Chief, which is a rock climbing area that's just a couple of miles from the house. You can't miss it. And so yeah, James and the rest of the crew at Squamish Search and Rescue, they've definitely done some pretty incredible rescues. things that you can't even imagine. So shout out to Squamish SAR and to James Dahmer in particular.
Heck yeah! It looks like I need to get another story recorded. I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
up
I
there.
think so.
Let's go, James. Wow. Man, that's incredible. Nice. You're a board member for that association now. That's great.
Yeah. It's pretty fun to be able to kind of help steer the direction of wilderness medicine in Canada. So pretty happy to be part of that group.
Cool, man. Very cool. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors. The Real ResQ Store.com. Your shop for all your podcast worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the realrescuestore.com and let your gear do the talking. This is going to bring us to our next section, like in what you're creating and things you're steering to one area or another, because you are a co-founder and president of Team Aeromedical. Team spelled TEAAM. So what is this? And I know it's out helping those in need. It's showing up on scene. It's with a helicopter. But what are you doing? This is amazing.
So TEAM stands for Technical Evacuation Advanced Aeromedical Society. So it's a nonprofit society. It's a wilderness air ambulance program. So we do a lot of things that look very similar to search and rescue. There's a lot of crossover, but we employ paramedics, nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, Association of Canadian Mountain guides, and rescue specialists. And we work in hoist and fixed line equipped helicopters, as well as some fixed wing aircraft, and respond to our legal mandate, which is any patient in need beyond the reach of traditional ambulance services or that requires rescue equipment or in an industrial setting. So what that means is that I just went and rescued a logger that fell 25 feet that I talked about earlier.
Yep.
We can go to remote communities or First Nations communities where there is no ambulance service. We can go, rescue heli-ski clients that are injured with one of the many heli-ski operators in British Columbia. So we cover 90% of the geography, but 10% of the population, versus the provincial ambulance service that covers 10% of the geography and 90% of the population.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
Yeah, it's an interesting program. We started in Squamish, which is my hometown. And it was specifically because we saw, with the loss of Tim and then the rescue that we did for the patient in the tree well. Sorry, I struggle with saying names because of confidentiality issues and that kind of thing, but it's in the paper. But yeah, so we decided that we would build a program that could provide advanced life support or critical care medicine in the most rugged places that typically don't receive it. And so in 2017, we opened our program up as a not-for-profit based out of Squamish. And since that time, we've expanded to multiple bases. So we've got a base in Vancouver Island in Campbell River. We've got a base in Prince George, which is kind of the center of the province. We do have a base up in the northeast of the province, but we're moving that to the next province over in Alberta. So we'll have a base in Alberta in the new year. And then we're opening a base in the far southeast of the province in the next few weeks in a town called Revelstoke, which is an amazing town to go skiing as well. And then in the new year, again, we've got our sights on opening up a base in the Yukon Territories in a city called Whitehorse.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what? I like highlighting stuff. You guys actually were in Vertical Magazine, so shout out to Vertical Magazine. It literally says, due to overhead snag hazards at the accident site, Team landed on a nearby logging access road. And you're actually credited with the photo, Miles Randell photo. And the photo is right here. This is crazy. Like, you guys were literally landing on the service road, looking up at, I mean, there's barely even a landing zone there. Like, I'm impressed they even landed there. It's awesome. Of course, it is those guys, all you guys up there. I mean, holy cow. I've seen the places that you guys put the helicopter. It's amazing. So, yeah. So what is that? What was that one? That was a rescue.
That was our first ever rescue. That ironically, John Wilcox that we talked about from the hypothermic cardiac arrest and being Tim's partner. He sorry to make a long story longer, but when John
man.
When John retired as a paramedic, he did what one would normally do when you retire from a 35 or 40 year career. He took up paragliding. And unfortunately, he had a paragliding accident that was totally life-changing. He ended up being paralyzed after about a 150-foot fall that one of our guys, a team guy, ended up rescuing him from with a team called Chilliwack Search and Rescue. That they long-lined him out. And so when I pitched the idea to John about the team program, he was wheelchair-bound and was facing a life of paraplegia. And so when I pitched it to him, I thought that he would be our air ops coordinator, or our version of a dispatcher. But he loved the idea and was determined to get back to being healthy, and so he made an absolute miracle recovery. And so on our first mission, he actually was my partner, and was still definitely got some challenges because of his injury, but he was absolutely capable. Hiked into the scene with as much gear as I was carrying and helped carry the patient out. And so yeah, the scenario was a hand faller, which is when you think about Canada and you think about the old Monty Python song, "I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay." That's what a hand faller is. So
okay,
this guy had gone to his bosses 2 weeks before and said, "Hey, you guys need to pay attention to this team program. I think we need this because we're falling trees by chainsaw in super remote places, and we're 14 hours from help." And so they signed up with us, and 2 weeks later, this guy got hit in the back by a huge log that had fallen, a danger tree that fell, and he got thrown down the bank 50 feet, and it fractured his spine, fractured a bunch of ribs, had a collapsed lung. So a pretty significant injury for sure. And so when we were called, we were overhead in about 35 minutes, which it's about an 8-hour drive to get there.
Wow,
and
that's great.
Yeah, it was a pretty funny story because he was, poor guy was screaming in pain. And so we quickly started an IV. We'll go back to ketamine again, but I gave him some ketamine, and he went from screaming in pain to pointing at a skull logo on my chest rig and saying, "Dude, is that the Punisher?" He was like absolutely in the zone. So happy that his pain was gone. And of course, all of his coworkers were blown away. So when it came time, we got him packaged in a vacuum spine board, decided to get him off to the helicopter because the situation with the trees around there was a bit too dangerous for us to long line. So we did the, hike a bike to get him in there, and get out. And literally I went to grab my kit and I looked up and all these loggers had picked up the stretcher and they were gone. They were like, we're getting this guy to the helicopter and you guys aren't going to put in any work because, we really respect what you guys are doing for our friend. And so it was like an incredible team effort. They brought up like bottled water for us because it was a hot summer's day. Like they treated us like gold. And so we got their injured coworker to the provincial trauma center. Should have been about a 14-hour trip to get him to healthcare. Typically, like I'm, as I mentioned, making fun of John Blown before, I love to drive Jeeps. I've always driven Jeeps. I got a monster Jeep with 37s on outside in the driveway. And I've had parts fall off the thing on the road that this guy should have been taken out by. And so we got him to the trauma center in an hour and 40 minutes after his injury. And the neurosurgeon was like, yeah, this guy, if he'd have been driven down that road, he would have been paralyzed for sure. His injury was significant and completely unstable. But instead, he was able to see that neurosurgeon, within the hour and 40-minute mark, received the surgery that he needed, and eventually, after some months of healthcare and rehab, he was able to walk out of hospital, got back to skiing the next season, and got back to a regular life without a life-altering injury. So yeah, it was pretty incredible to see that our program worked, and our first mission was proof positive that it's doing the right thing. It's making a difference in people's lives.
Dang. Wow, that's amazing. Actually, I love shouting stuff out. So you guys were recognized again in the newspaper, like in 2018. This is the Squamish Chief. It literally says Squamish Paramedic Service keeping busy since launch. Team, a pay-in service for industry, completed at least 56 missions since June of 2018. Oh, this was in 2019 that this article was written. That's amazing, man.
So to clarify one of the comments made there, so we're not funded by government at all. So everything that we do, we've got to figure out how to pay for. So we do pay our staff when they're on a mission. We obviously have to pay for the helicopter and all the equipment, insurance and training and all that kind of stuff. And because we don't get any financial support from government, we've turned to both industry, who support us, like the logging sector, the tree planting sector, oil and gas, and adventure sports. They help us out a bit. And then we've also adopted the system that the Swiss use. So there's a membership-based program. So I was just chatting with a guy before we logged on together this morning. Effectively for $210 a year, you're signed up with us and covered. So it's not incredibly expensive, but there is a cost to it because we've got to figure out how to pay our bills. But yeah, so that's what it means when it says pay for service, is that it's a membership-based program. We're working on all kinds of funding options to make sure that we move away from that model eventually. But the example I'll give is Air Zermatt, Air Glacier and Rega in Switzerland, who we went to visit in 2017. Gerald at Air Zermatt opened up their books and really helped us learn how to build a program like this. And effectively for 75 Swiss francs a year, your entire family and your livestock are covered for helicopter rescue in Switzerland.
And
so
your livestock?
we don't have the same...
Oh, shoot. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's a law in Switzerland that if your horse, your cow, your goat or whatever gets ill or injured or dies on the local hills, that you have to remove it or move it to veterinary care. And so Air Zermatt and all the other air rescue services, they'll long line cows, horses, you name it. We used to say that like a logger in British Columbia gets worse rescue care than a horse or a cow in Switzerland before TEAM.
Holy cow.
So,
no pun intended on that one either.
Yeah. Now that TEAM's around, then things have changed for sure. But yeah, so it's an interesting program in Switzerland. They're dialed. They've got it all figured out. When we were there in 2017, it was their 50th anniversary. So in 2017, we were 50 years behind the Swiss, the Australians, and the Kiwis. So we're playing a pretty solid game of catch up. But I love the fact that they're willing to help us figure out how to make it work and be as effective a resource as possible.
It's one of the great things about having somebody else that's already paved the way. Like they've already got lessons learned that you don't need to battle through because they've already battled through that. And they're just like, no, skip this step, go directly here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Miles, how do people get in touch with you to sign up or just get information?
So we have our own call center for when you call us in an emergency. So you can call us direct, you can text us, you can use your satellite devices to message us. So it cuts a lot of time out of the dispatching timeframes. And then if people are wanting to look up about our program or sign up, www.teaam.ca is our website. And you can always reach us at admin@team.ca, which is min@teaam.ca.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you for that. Miles, this is incredible, man. I thank you so much for sharing not only some of your own personal rescue stories, but what you're doing to try to, again, help those in need. You said it, 10% of the people and 90% of the geography. That is amazing. And there are some places that people get to that you just like, you're like, how did you even get there?
Yep, absolutely. When we come overhead and we're looking down trying to find the people, I mean, it's needle in a haystack. I'm sure you're used to it from your setting, but then you look at them and you're like, wow, really? There? Okay, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something. There's no doubt.
Man, I love it. I love it. Miles, I have been like in awe of all these stories. Thank you so much for joining me. Before I let you go, I would love to get a piece of advice from you. So my question to you at this point, with everything that you've been through and all the ups and the downs, and starting from a carpet salesman to now CEO, co-founder, president of TEAAM, what advice would you give to everybody that's doing the job?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know. I think it's so broad. What a dick, huh? Jeez.
I've got again. So I've got my tattoo of Tim and I here, and on this part of my arm here, I've got an old Latin saying that says, "I will either find a way or make one." And I think that's kind of the story of my life, is that you never give up. Always either find a way or make one. Whether it comes to my mental health, I will flat out tell you, in 2018, I was deemed handicapped, disabled, and unable to work again because of my mental health injuries from post-traumatic stress. And I found a way back. My family, my friends, my coworkers at TEAAM, like TEAAM is the most supportive workplace for people with mental health injuries. I've got a service dog that has totally changed my life, and some treatments that have been incredible. And I recently got reassessed. I went from scoring amongst the highest scores for post-traumatic stress injuries to being assessed as not even meeting threshold to be diagnosed anymore. So just don't give up. You can always find a way to get to where you need to be. And when it comes to the TEAAM program, it's the same thing. We've hit every kind of roadblock you can imagine: politics, financial, you name it, but we're doing the right thing. And if you just find your way or make your way, that will always achieve your goals.
It's a good piece of advice right there. Thank you, Miles. I appreciate it. Man, I told you at the beginning of this podcast that I need to get up there. There are a lot of you guys I got to come see. We're just going to get together. It's like a big group barbecue, ski trip, mountain biking trip. You pick one. We're going. Of course, somebody's got to be on duty. So I don't know.
Yep,
we'll pick some of the other guys. It'd be fine.
Come on up. We'll put the junior guys on duty that day. So
that's perfect. That's perfect. Do we want to do that? You know what? Yes, because all the senior guys will be around each other. We'll protect each other. It'll be perfect.
Totally.
And holding up a glass of whiskey.
We can make that happen. We got a little tradition with our mountain rescue training that we do it up on the local mountains in a range called the Tantalus Range. And after training's done on the first day, we camp up there, up on the glacier. And in memory of our friend Jim Douglas, who passed away this year, who was our base manager in Squamish, he would always chip off some glacial ice, and we'd sit up there and sip some bourbon and in glacier ice. And maybe we'll have to do that.
Oh, yes, please. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm in. I like it.
Awesome.
Miles, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I look forward to the day we get together and chip off some glacier ice for a whiskey.
The door's always open. Come on up.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, Those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ Podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
The RealResQStore.com. Your shop for all your podcast-worthy gear. From comfortable shirts to cozy mugs, we've got everything to showcase your love for your favorite podcast. So what are you waiting for? Head to the RealResQStore.com and let your gear do the talking. And attention all rescue professionals and tactical athletes. Ready Swimmer and the Real ResQ have teamed up to bring you the ultimate solution in tactical athlete training. Developed by military rescue professionals, our team boasts over 60 years of combined experience. Elevate your performance both physically and mentally with our individualized programming. Contact us at ReadySwimmer.com or through therealresq.com and unlock your full tactical athlete potential. The question is, are you ready? Hey, Miles, quick question.
Yeah.
What's the funniest thing that's ever happened on a training event?
I gotta say, so this is something that I'm sure has happened to everybody, but I was up in Whitehorse and we were doing some long line training, and we had the national news media there. It was a big deal. So I've got my Gore-Tex gear on, I've got my parka on, got my flight harness over the top, everything's set up and ready to go. And I just quickly wanted to check the rigging before we went live on what was a training event that was going to be televised by the media. So I squat down to look underneath the aircraft, and I hear and feel black, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? So I'm looking at Rachel, who lives up in Whitehorse, and she's a Whitehorse paramedic who's going to be part of our team when we open up there. And I'm like, Rachel, I got to ask you, have I just blown the crotch of my pants out in front of the news media? And she's like, can I look? Like, I feel awkward looking at your butt. And I'm like, can you just take a look and make sure that I'm not showing my butt to the world? Anyway, it turns out I'd just blown out the pocket stitching. But here I am in front of all these national news cameras going, oh man, I hope I'm wearing decent looking underwear today.
Oh God, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, thank you, Miles. I very much appreciate that. Thanks, man.
No problem at all.